Ambassador Zethkri walked through the crystal halls of the Galactic Council building. His 4 arms carried data tablets filled with lies about Earth. For 300 years, every major alien race had agreed to keep the same secret. They told everyone that humans were primitive and stupid. They said Earth was just a backward planet with creatures who barely understood fire. But this was not true at all. Zethkri stopped at a large window that showed the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, a small blue planet that the Council had marked for slow destruction. The plan was simple and cruel. They would steal everything valuable from Earth's solar system. They would take the metals, the rare elements, and anything else they could use. They disguised their mining ships as asteroids, so humans would never know what was happening. The Council told themselves this was normal. Strong races always took what they wanted from weak ones. They had done this to dozens of other planets. The humans would never fight back because they did not even know aliens existed. At least, that is what everyone believed. In her small office on the other side of the galaxy, junior analyst Kira Volkov was having a very bad day. She worked for the Council's communication division, and her job was boring. She spent her days reading radio signals from primitive planets. Most of the signals were just random noise or simple messages about weather and news. But today was different. A message had come to her computer by mistake. It should have gone to the military division, but computer errors happen sometimes. Kira almost deleted it without looking. She was glad she did not. The message was from Earth, but it was not primitive at all. It was written in a code so advanced that Kira's computer needed 30 minutes just to understand it was a code. When she finally broke through the first layer of encryption, she found something impossible. Humans were talking about quantum mechanics. They were discussing faster-than-light travel. They were sharing information about alien biology that they should not have known. Most shocking of all, they were talking about the Council itself. Kira's hands shook as she read more. The humans knew about the mining ships. They knew about the Council's plans for their planet. They even knew the names of Council members who had never visited Earth. How was this possible? She spent the next 6 hours digging deeper into Earth's communication networks. What she found made her feel sick. The humans had been watching the Council for decades. They had somehow learned to hide their true technology behind fake primitive signals. While the Council thought humans were still fighting with metal weapons, they had actually built starships that could travel between galaxies. Kira realized she had uncovered the biggest lie in galactic history. She printed everything and ran to her supervisor's office. Commander Thox was an old reptilian who had worked for the Council for 200 years. He looked at the papers with his 3 eyes, and his green skin went pale. "This cannot be real," he said. "Humans are primitive. Our scouts confirmed this." "When was the last scout mission to Earth?" Kira asked. Thox checked his computer. His face went even more pale. 70 years ago. 70 years. Humans had been free to develop their technology for 70 years, while the Council assumed they were still primitive. In that time, they had apparently learned everything about every major alien race in the galaxy. "We need to tell the High Council immediately," Thox said. But as they prepared their report, more intercepted messages came in. These were different. They were not hidden at all. They were broadcast on open channels that anyone could hear. The messages were simple and clear. "We know what you have been doing. We have been watching you watch us. This ends now." The message was repeated in 47 different alien languages, including some that humans should never have heard before. Each translation was perfect, better than most professional translators could manage. At the bottom of each message was a list of coordinates. Kira recognized them immediately. They were the locations of every secret Council military base, every hidden research station, and every government building that was supposed to be classified. Humans had not just been watching the Council. They had mapped every important location in the galaxy. Fox activated the emergency communication system and sent an urgent message to the High Council. Within minutes, red alert signals were flashing throughout the council building. Emergency sessions were called on every major world. But it was too late. As news of the discovery spread through the government, panic began to set in. Military commanders checked their secret bases and found human ships already in position nearby. Scientists reviewed their research and found evidence that humans had been studying them for years. Politicians discovered that their most private meetings had somehow been recorded. The Valorian Empire, the Zephyrian Trade Federation, the Krolix warrior clans, and dozens of other races all faced the same terrible truth. They had been completely outplayed by a species they had dismissed as harmless animals. In the High Council chamber, Ambassador Zethkri stood before the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Representatives from hundreds of worlds had gathered for an emergency session. The room was filled with panic and anger. "How could our intelligence be so wrong?" demanded the council leader, a massive being whose species had conquered half the galaxy. "It was not wrong," Zethkri replied quietly. "It was exactly what the humans wanted us to believe." The truth was becoming clear. Humans had not just hidden their technology. They had created an elaborate deception that lasted for generations. They had made the council feel safe and superior, while they learned everything they needed to know about their enemies. Now the hunters had become the hunted, and no one knew what the humans planned to do next. Outside the council building, the stars looked the same as always. But everyone knew that somewhere in that darkness, human ships were watching and waiting. The galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilization had just learned that they were not as smart as they thought they were. The age of easy conquest was about to end. On a space station orbiting the Krolix homeworld, Security Chief Vorthak was having the worst day of his long military career. He had just received a message that made no sense. It claims that his best intelligence officer, Korvex, was actually a human in disguise. This was impossible. Vorthak had known Korvex for 15 years. They had fought together in 3 wars. Korvex was a perfect Krolix warrior, with all the right instincts and reflexes. His scales were the correct color, his size was normal, and his blood was the right type. Most importantly, he had killed enemies of the Krolix Empire without hesitation. But the message included a video file that changed everything. The video showed Korvex in a medical facility, undergoing procedures that removed artificial scales and synthetic bone implants. It showed how human surgeons had changed his skeleton, added extra organs, and modified his DNA to match Krolix biology. The transformation had taken 2 years and left him barely recognizable as human. Vorthak watched in horror as the video revealed dozens of other Krolix officers who were actually humans. Some had been working in sensitive positions for decades. They had access to military secrets, government communications, and advanced technology. The same discovery was happening all across the galaxy. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the war room deep beneath the mountains of Colorado. Around her, hundreds of technicians monitored communications from every major alien civilization. The walls were covered with screens showing alien military bases, government buildings, and research stations. For 40 years, this facility had been the heart of Operation Silent Horizon. It was humanity's most secret and most successful intelligence program. While aliens believed humans were primitive, Earth's best scientists had been working on the greatest spy network in galactic history. "Report," Admiral Chen said to her chief of operations. "All sleeper agents have confirmed their positions," Colonel Martinez replied. "We have people inside every major government, every important military base, and every critical research facility. The aliens never suspected anything. How many agents total? 47,000, spread across 832 worlds. Admiral Chen smiled. It had taken incredible planning and resources to place so many people without being detected. Each agent had undergone years of surgery, genetic modification, and psychological training. They had learned alien languages, customs, and ways of thinking. Most importantly, they had learned to think and act like the species they were imitating. Instead of rushing, humans had spent generations building their networks slowly and carefully. They had studied each alien race for years before sending agents. They had learned about alien medicine, technology, and biology. When the first human spies finally arrived on alien worlds, they were completely convincing. "What about our technology programs?" Admiral Chen asked. "Excellent progress. Our people in the Cypherian research centers have copied their faster-than-light engines. The agents in Valorian military bases have recorded their weapon designs. We have samples of advanced materials from 17 different civilizations." While the Galactic Council believed they were superior, humans had been stealing their best ideas and improving on them. Human scientists had combined technologies from dozens of alien races to create weapons and ships that were better than anything individual races had built. But technology was not the only thing humans had learned. Agent Rebecca Wong had been living on the Valorian homeworld for 12 years. To everyone around her, she was Zarathel, a loyal citizen who worked in the government records office. Her job was boring but perfect for gathering intelligence. Every day, she processed classified documents about military movements, resource allocation, and political decisions. She learned about secret alliances, hidden weaknesses, and future plans. All of this information was quietly transmitted back to Earth using communication methods the Valorians did not even know existed. Rebecca had also learned something more important than military secrets. She had learned how the Valorian government really worked. She understood their politics, their fears, and their weaknesses. She knew which leaders could be trusted, and which ones would betray their own people for power. This knowledge was being gathered on every alien world by thousands of human agents. The most shocking discovery had come from Agent Marcus Torres, who had spent 8 years working in the Galactic Council's Central Archive. His official job was maintaining old records, but his real mission was understanding how the Council made decisions about primitive planets. What he found was worse than anyone on Earth had imagined. The Council did not just ignore primitive planets. They actively hunted them. When they found a world with valuable resources and weak defenses, they would mark it for development. This meant slowly destroying the native civilization while taking everything useful. Earth was not the first planet chosen for this treatment. The Council had already destroyed 43 other civilizations. They would move slowly, taking decades to strip a world of resources, while making sure the native population never realized what was happening. Marcus had found the complete records of these destroyed worlds. He had seen reports describing the final days of civilizations that never knew they were under attack. Entire species had died, thinking they were alone in the universe, never knowing that aliens were killing them. The worst part was how proud the Council was of their efficiency. They kept detailed records of how to optimize the destruction process. They shared methods for keeping primitive species ignorant while harvesting their worlds. They treated genocide like a business problem to be solved. When Admiral Chen read Marcus's reports, she made a decision that would change galactic history. "Begin Phase 2 of Silent Horizon," she ordered. Phase 2 was different from the intelligence gathering that had come before. Phase 2 was about preparation for war. All across the galaxy, human agents began new missions. Instead of just watching and reporting, they started making small changes to alien systems. A software update here, a maintenance report there, a personnel transfer somewhere else. To alien observers, these changes looked routine and harmless. But each change was part of a larger plan that would allow humans to take control of alien infrastructure when the time was right. Agent Sarah Kim had spent 6 years working as a technical specialist on a Krolix military base. Everyone thought she was maintaining computer systems. Actually, she was installing hidden programs that would activate when Earth sent the right signal. Agent David Park worked in the Zephyrian Power Grid Control Center. He had been slowly modifying the control software for 3 years. When activated, his changes would shut down power across the entire Zephyrian Trade Federation. Similar preparations were happening on hundreds of worlds. Human agents were positioning themselves to cripple alien civilization with a single coordinated strike. The aliens had no idea this was happening. They were too confident in their superiority to imagine that primitive humans could outthink them. They assumed their technology was too advanced for humans to understand. This arrogance would soon cost them everything. In her final report before Phase 3 began, Admiral Chen wrote, "The enemy has revealed their true nature. They are not explorers or diplomats. They are predators who destroy civilizations for profit. Earth will not become their 44th victim. Instead, they will learn what happens when predators choose the wrong prey." The galaxy was about to discover that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their weapons. It was their ability to work together against a common enemy, and their refusal to accept defeat even when facing impossible odds. At exactly 0800 Standard Galactic Time, the galaxy changed forever. Commander Zektor was drinking his morning stimulant when every screen in the Valorian Defense Command went black. Emergency lights flickered on, then died. The massive orbital station that protected the Valorian homeworld suddenly had no power, no life support, and no gravity. Zektor floated helplessly in the dark, trying to understand what was happening. This station had triple backup systems and enough shielding to survive a direct hit from their most powerful weapons. Nothing should have been able to disable it so completely. He was not alone in his confusion. Across the galaxy, 47 star systems were experiencing the same impossible event. Every council military base, government center, and orbital facility had simultaneously lost all power. Thousands of space stations hung dark and lifeless in space. Ground installations found their computers locked and their weapons offline. The attack had been perfectly timed and absolutely devastating. On the Krolix battle station near their capital world, Admiral Gorthak watched his tactical displays die one by one. His mighty fleet of 200 warships was suddenly blind and helpless. Their engines still worked, but their navigation computers refused to respond. Their weapons had power, but their targeting systems showed nothing but error messages. "What is happening?" he demanded. His communications officer tried to answer, but the communication system was dead too. Emergency backup systems that should have activated automatically remained silent. Even the simple intercom system had stopped working. Admiral Gorthak realized that someone had taken control of every critical system on his ships. Krolix technology included safeguards specifically designed to prevent this kind of attack. Multiple independent systems meant that even if enemies captured some controls, others would still function. But every system was down. The same scene was playing out on Zephyrian trade stations, Altarian research bases, and council diplomatic facilities. An entire galactic civilization had been brought to its knees in minutes. In the Galactic Council's emergency bunker on their capital world, High Administrator Veltar tried to contact his military commanders. The communication array was functioning, but no one was responding. Status boards that should have shown the locations of thousands of council ships displayed only red error messages. "Sir," his aide reported, "we are receiving a transmission on the emergency frequency. Put it through immediately." It spoke in perfect galactic standard, but the accent was clearly from Earth. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. Your military assets are now under our control. Your leadership is alive, but powerless. You have 60 minutes to prepare for formal surrender negotiations. Veltar could not believe what he was hearing. This is impossible. Humans do not have the technology to— You have 59 minutes, the voice interrupted, then went silent. High above the Valorian homeworld, space began to shimmer and bend. Something massive was emerging from faster-than-light travel. But it was not using any form of FTL technology the Valorians recognized. There were no energy signatures, no gravitational distortions, and no radiation emissions. One moment, space was empty. The next moment, a human battleship hung in orbit, like it had always been there. The ship was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Its hull was made from some kind of advanced metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange geometric patterns covered its surface, and energy coursed through channels that formed complex designs. It was clearly built using technology far beyond what the Council possessed. Commander Zektor, still floating in his powerless station, watched through a window as more human ships appeared. They materialized around every major Valorian facility with casual ease. Each ship was different, suggesting that humans had not just built a fleet, but had been experimenting with multiple advanced technologies. The human ships made no aggressive moves. They simply positioned themselves and waited. Similar scenes were occurring throughout Council space. Human fleets appeared at every major military installation, but they did not attack. Instead, they sent the same message to every facility. Surrender now, and your people will not be harmed. Continue to resist, and face the consequences. Most Council commanders had never faced an enemy that offered mercy. In their experience, war meant complete destruction of the losing side. The idea that humans might actually keep their promise was difficult to understand. Some commanders chose to test human resolve. Battle Group Omega, a Krolix fleet known for never retreating, attempted to attack the human ships near their homeworld. Admiral Vorthak ordered his remaining functional ships to charge the human vessels, planning to ram them if necessary. The human response was swift and precise. As the Krolix ships approached, their engines simply stopped working. Not destroyed, not damaged, just turned off. The ships continued moving forward due to momentum, but they could not accelerate or change direction. Their crews watched helplessly as their vessels drifted past the human ships like ancient sailing boats with no wind. Then the human fleet did something that terrified every military officer who witnessed it. They turned the Krolix engines back on. The message was clear. Humans could control alien technology better than the aliens themselves. They could disable enemy ships without destroying them, and they could reactivate systems whenever they chose. This level of control over alien technology should have been impossible. On the Zephyrian trade hub, Station Master Kellex faced a different demonstration of human capability. His station's massive cargo handling systems suddenly began operating on their own. Robotic arms moved containers around without any input from Zephyrian controllers. The station's computer announced that all trade records were being updated and corrected. Within minutes, the human systems had identified hundreds of fraudulent transactions, illegal cargo shipments, and corrupt deals that Zephyrian investigators had missed for years. The humans were not just taking control of the station, they were fixing problems that the Zephyrians had been unable to solve. But the most shocking demonstration came at the Council's most secret research facility. Deep in the Void Sector, the Council operated a classified laboratory where they developed their most advanced weapons. The facility was hidden inside an artificial asteroid, protected by technology that made it invisible to most sensors. Only a handful of beings in the galaxy knew it existed. A human ship appeared directly next to the facility. Not only had humans found the secret base, but they had somehow materialized their ship inside the asteroid's defensive shields. This required knowledge of the facility's exact position, its shielding technology, and its internal layout. Dr. Yelnoth, the facility's chief scientist, received a personal communication from the human vessel. "Doctor, we have reviewed your research into biological weapons designed to target primitive species. Your work has been automatically transmitted to every major news organization in the galaxy. We suggest you prepare a public explanation for your experiments." The human ship vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Dr. Yelnoth to face the political consequences of his exposed war crimes. As the 17-minute attack period ended, the scope of humanity's capabilities became clear. They had not simply defeated the Council's military forces. They had demonstrated complete control over alien technology, perfect intelligence about secret facilities, and the ability to appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning. Most importantly, they had done all of this without killing anyone. Every council leader received the same message as the human fleets settled into position around their worlds. "We could have destroyed you in the first minute. Instead, we chose to show mercy. The question is whether you are wise enough to accept it." Admiral Chen's final broadcast of the day was heard throughout Council space. "For 300 years, you have treated primitive species as resources to be harvested. You have destroyed civilizations and murdered billions of innocent beings. Today, that ends. Tomorrow, we will discuss the terms of a new galactic order where such atrocities are impossible." The galaxy's most powerful military forces had been defeated by an enemy they had never taken seriously. The age of Council dominance was over, and a new era was about to begin. In the darkness of their powerless stations, Council leaders finally understood the truth. Humanity had not just been hiding their technology. They had been preparing for this moment for decades, building the tools and gathering the knowledge they would need to bring justice to a corrupt galaxy. The hunters had become the hunted, and the prey had revealed itself to be the most dangerous predator of all. Trade Minister Felnara of the Zephyrian Trade Federation watched her life's work collapse in real time. The massive displays in her office showed market data from across the galaxy, and every single number was falling towards zero. The Zephyrian currency, which had been the galaxy's most stable money for 2 centuries, was now worth less than scrap metal. Trading partners were canceling contracts and demanding immediate payment in physical goods instead of Federation credits. Entire economic sectors that depended on Council stability were shutting down. "How bad is it?" she asked her assistant. "Catastrophic, Minister. The banking system has lost 90% of its value. Our shipping contracts are being canceled faster than we can count them, and our insurance companies are declaring bankruptcy because they cannot possibly cover the losses." Felnara had built her career on the idea that the Galactic Council was too powerful to ever fall. The Federation's entire economy was based on serving Council needs and managing trade between Council worlds. If the Council collapsed, the Federation would collapse with it. But that was exactly what was happening. Similar panic was spreading through every civilization that had depended on Council protection. The Altarian Science Collective found that their research grants had been suspended indefinitely. The Nexus Mining Consortium discovered that their drilling rights on primitive worlds were no longer valid. Dozens of smaller species that had served as Council allies suddenly faced an uncertain future. In the warrior halls of the Krolix homeworld, something even worse was happening. The entire Krolix culture was based on the idea that strength determined everything. The strong conquered the weak, and the weak served the strong. This was not just politics for the Krolix. It was religion. General Thakmor, veteran of 50 battles and conqueror of 12 worlds, sat in his private chambers staring at reports that made no sense. According to every military analysis, humans should have been completely destroyed by now. The Krolix had the most advanced weapons in the galaxy, Their warriors were bred for combat and trained from birth to kill. But humans had defeated them without even fighting. "Sir," his aide reported, "we have received a communication from Earth." "What do they want?" Thakmor growled. "They are offering to return control of our military systems in exchange for a formal apology for our past actions against primitive species." Thakmor felt his world crumble around him. The humans were not demanding tribute or territory. They were not taking slaves or resources. They were asking for an apology. This was completely outside Krolik's understanding. In Krolik's culture, the victor took everything from the defeated. Winners became rulers, and losers became slaves. But humans seemed to follow completely different rules. They had demonstrated overwhelming power, then offered mercy to their enemies. "Sir, there is more. They are also offering to share advanced medical technology with us if we agree to stop attacking primitive worlds. If humans could actually cure these problems, it would save millions of Krolik's lives. But why would an enemy offer such help?" While established powers struggled to understand the new reality, smaller species began to see opportunity in the chaos. The Volani had been conquered by the Council 300 years ago. Since then, they had served as servants and laborers on Council worlds. They had no military power, no economic influence, and no political rights. But humans had specifically mentioned them in their first galaxy-wide broadcast. All species that have been enslaved or oppressed by the Council are hereby declared free and independent. Earth offers protection and support to any world seeking to establish self-governance. President Kelvara of the Volani resistance movement could hardly believe what she was hearing. Her people had fought a secret war against Council oppression for generations. They had never expected outside help, especially from a species they had never heard of. Within hours of the human announcement, Volani workers across the galaxy began leaving their assigned duties. They gathered in public spaces, singing traditional songs that had been banned for centuries. For the first time in their lives, they could openly celebrate their culture. The Council races that had oppressed them were too busy dealing with their own crises to stop them. Similar celebrations were beginning on dozens of worlds, where primitive or conquered species lived under Council rule. Humans had not just defeated the Council militarily, they had given hope to everyone who had suffered under the old system. But not everyone was celebrating. Emergency sessions were being held in government buildings across the galaxy as leaders tried to figure out how to respond to humanity's dominance. The old alliances were meaningless now, and every species had to decide whether to submit to human authority or try to resist. Chancellor Vorthek of the hegemony called together his closest advisors to discuss their options. "What do we know about human intentions?" he asked. "Their public statements suggest they want to create some kind of democratic galactic government," replied his intelligence chief. "They are talking about equality between species and protection for primitive worlds." "And their private communications?" "That is the problem, sir. We cannot intercept their private communications. Their encryption is beyond our capabilities." This was another shock to Council leadership. For centuries, they had been able to monitor communications between any species they chose. Privacy had been a luxury that only the Council itself enjoyed. Now, humans had technology that made their conversations completely secret. Chancellor Vortek realized that humans could be planning anything, and his government would have no advance warning. "What about our military response options?" His military advisor looked uncomfortable. "Sir, we have no military response options. Our fleets are still paralyzed, our weapon systems are still offline, and human ships are positioned to destroy our critical infrastructure within minutes." "So, we negotiate?" "We have no choice." Across the galaxy, the same conversation was happening in hundreds of government buildings. Species that had never known defeat were suddenly facing the reality of complete powerlessness. But the most important discussions were happening among ordinary citizens. On worlds throughout Council space, people gathered around communication screens to watch human broadcasts. Unlike Council propaganda, these broadcasts were clear and honest about what humans intended. Admiral Chen appeared on screens throughout the galaxy, speaking directly to alien populations. We know that many of you have suffered under the Council system. We know that your leaders have made decisions that benefited the powerful while harming the innocent. We want to create a new system where every species has a voice and every world has protection. But we also know that change is frightening. We will not force you to accept our help. Any world that chooses to remain independent will be respected. Any species that prefers to govern itself will be supported. What we will not allow is the continuation of genocide and slavery that has characterized the old system. Those practices end now. The message was being translated into hundreds of languages and broadcast on every available channel. Humans were not just talking to governments, they were talking to every person in the galaxy. The response was overwhelming. Communication networks were flooded with messages from individual aliens expressing support for human proposals. Petition drives began on dozens of worlds, calling for new governments that would cooperate with Earth. Underground resistance movements that had been fighting Council oppression for generations suddenly found themselves with millions of new supporters. Within days, it became clear that ordinary citizens supported humanity far more than their leaders did. This created a new crisis for Council governments. They could not ignore public opinion forever, but they also could not accept the loss of their power and privilege. Some leaders tried to negotiate better terms for themselves. Others attempted to form new alliances that might resist human influence. A few began planning military actions that they hoped might restore the old order. All of these plans would fail, because they were based on the assumption that humans thought like other galactic species. Council leaders assumed that humans wanted to rule the galaxy for their own benefit. They could not understand that humans might actually mean what they said about democracy and equality. This misunderstanding would lead to even greater shocks in the days to come. As the first week after the human attack ended, one thing was certain. The galaxy would never return to the way it had been. The old order was dead, and something entirely new was being born. The question was whether it would be born peacefully or through more conflict. That decision now rested with species who had never imagined they might have to choose between their traditional ways and an uncertain future. For many, it was the hardest decision they would ever make. 3 months after the 17-minute war, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in what had once been the Galactic Council's Supreme Chamber. But the room looked completely different now. The old chamber had been designed to show power and create fear. The council members had sat on raised platforms that looked down on everyone else. The lighting had been dim and dramatic. Everything about the room had been meant to make visitors feel small and unimportant. Now the room was bright and welcoming. The raised platforms were gone, replaced by a perfect circle of seats where representatives from 847 different species sat as equals. No one was higher than anyone else. No one looked down on their neighbors. Admiral Chen walked to the center of the circle, where a simple podium waited. She carried no weapons and wore no symbols of rank. She was here as a representative of humanity, not as a conqueror. 3 months ago, this room was the center of a system that had caused suffering across the galaxy for over 1,000 years, she began. Today it becomes the center of something new. Today we establish the Terran Accords, a galactic confederation based on equality, justice, and mutual respect. The response was unlike anything the old chamber had ever heard. Instead of fearful silence, there was enthusiastic applause from representatives of dozens of species. Many of them were from worlds that had been oppressed under the old system, and were finally free to speak their minds. But not everyone was happy. Ambassador Zethkree of what had once been the Valorian Empire sat in his assigned seat, barely controlling his anger. His people had ruled dozens of star systems for centuries. They had been one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. Now they were just another voice in a democratic assembly. "This is madness," he whispered to the representative next to him. "How can primitive humans expect to govern a galaxy? They do not understand the complexities of interstellar politics." The representative he was talking to was Councillor Vetara of the Valani, a species that had been enslaved by the Valorians for 300 years. She looked at Zethkree with a special he had never seen before: complete lack of fear. "Perhaps," she replied, "the problem is that you understand those complexities too well. Sometimes, simple solutions are better than complex ones." Zethkree realized that everything had changed. Under the old system, a Valani would never have dared to speak to a Valorian that way. But now they were equals, and he had no power to punish her for disrespect. Admiral Chen continued her speech, outlining the principles of the new galactic government. The Terran Accords established 3 basic rules that cannot be changed. First, no species may attack or conquer another species. Second, every intelligent species has the right to govern itself according to its own values and customs. Third, any species that violates these rules will face immediate intervention by the combined forces of the Confederation. These rules apply to everyone equally. Humans will follow the same laws as everyone else. Earth will have 1 vote in the Galactic Assembly, the same as any other world. This caused murmurs of surprise throughout the chamber. Most species had expected humans to claim special privileges as the victors of the war. The idea that they would voluntarily limit their own power was difficult to understand. General Thakmor of the Krolix had come to the ceremony expecting to surrender his people's independence. Instead, he found himself listening to humans offer his species more freedom than they had enjoyed under the council system. "But what about enforcement?" he asked, when Admiral Chen finished her presentation. "How will these rules be maintained?" Admiral Chen smiled. "An excellent question, General. The answer is that enforcement will not be the responsibility of any single species. It will be a shared duty." She activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy divided into sectors. Each sector had a mixed patrol fleet with ships and crews from multiple species working together. No single species will have enough military power to threaten others. But together, we will have enough strength to stop any species that tries to return to the old ways of conquest and oppression. The display showed something remarkable. Human ships were scattered throughout these mixed fleets, but they were not in command positions. Instead, leadership rotated between different species based on their expertise and experience. General Thakmor studied the patrol assignments and realized something important. Humans had deliberately designed a system where they could not become galactic dictators, even if they wanted to. They had created a structure that prevented any single species from gaining too much power. This was completely different from how the Krolix would have handled victory. Over the following hours, Admiral Chen explained how the new confederation would work. Trade would be managed by joint committees with representatives from multiple species. Scientific research would be shared freely between all members. Disputes would be resolved by neutral arbitrators chosen from uninvolved species. Most importantly, there would be a formal process for adding new members to the Confederation as more species developed space travel. "We estimate that there are over 10,000 intelligent species in this galaxy," Admiral Chen said. "Most of them are still developing their technology and have never encountered aliens. Under the old council system, these species would eventually be conquered or destroyed. Under the new system, they will be protected until they are ready to join us as equals." Dr. Felthara of the Altarian Science Collective raised the tentacle to ask a question. "Admiral Chen, what about species that refuse to join the Confederation? What if some worlds prefer to remain independent?" Then they remain independent, Admiral Chen replied immediately. Membership in the Confederation is completely voluntary. Any world can leave at any time, and any world can choose never to join. The only requirement is that independent worlds cannot attack Confederation members or engage in slavery or genocide. This answer surprised many representatives. Under the old system, neutrality had been impossible. The Council had forced every species to choose sides and had punished anyone who tried to stay out of galactic politics. But perhaps the biggest surprise came when Admiral Chen announced the return of stolen resources. Over the past 3 months, human salvage teams have been working to return property that was taken from primitive worlds by the Council. Mining equipment has been removed from protected systems, stolen artifacts have been returned to their original homes, and compensation has been calculated for worlds that suffered environmental damage from illegal resource extraction. She activated another display that showed the scope of this operation. Hundreds of human ships were scattered across the galaxy, dismantling illegal mining operations and cleaning up environmental damage. The cost of this work was enormous, but humans were paying for it themselves without asking for anything in return. Chancellor Vorthek of the Hegemony could not understand this decision. Admiral, why are you spending your own resources to repair damage caused by others? What do you gain from this? Admiral Chen looked directly at him as she answered. Chancellor, we gain the chance to live in a galaxy where strong civilizations protect weak ones instead of destroying them. We gain the knowledge that future generations will inherit a better universe than the one we found. But what about profit? What about resources and territory? Earth has everything we need. We are not seeking to expand or conquer. We simply want to ensure that what happened to us never happens to anyone else. The Chancellor sat back in his chair, still confused. In his experience, power was always used for personal gain. The idea that humans might actually care about the welfare of strangers was outside his understanding. But the evidence was clear. Over 3 months, humans had done exactly what they promised. They had freed enslaved species, returned stolen property, and shared advanced technology without asking for payment. They had kept their word, even when it cost them significant resources. As the day continued, representatives from hundreds of worlds formally signed the Terran Accords. Some signed eagerly, grateful for the chance to participate in a fair galactic government. Others signed reluctantly, accepting the new system because they had no alternative. But sign they did. The ceremony concluded with Admiral Chen making one final announcement. Effective immediately, Earth's intelligence network will remain active throughout the galaxy. But its mission has changed. Instead of gathering military intelligence, our agents will now monitor compliance with the Accords and watch for new threats to galactic peace. She paused to let this sink in. To be absolutely clear, we will be watching everyone, including ourselves. Human activities will be subject to the same monitoring as everyone else's. If any species violates the Accords, the galactic community will know about it immediately. This was the final piece of the puzzle. Humans had not just created a new government, they had created a system that could detect and respond to threats before they became dangerous. As representatives began to leave the chamber, many of them reflected on what had happened. The old galactic order had been based on fear and strength. The new order was based on cooperation and justice. It was still unclear whether the new system would work in the long term. There would certainly be challenges and conflicts in the years ahead. Some species would try to cheat or find ways around the Accords. Others would test human resolve to see if they were truly committed to their principles. But for the first time in galactic history, there was hope for something better. Admiral Chen remained in the chamber after everyone else had left, looking at the empty circle of chairs. In a few hours, this room would host its first democratic vote on a galactic issue. Representatives from hundreds of worlds would debate and argue and eventually reach a decision that reflected the will of the majority, while protecting the rights of minorities. It would not be perfect, democracy never was, but it would be fair, and that was more than the galaxy had ever had before. As she walked toward the exit, Admiral Chen thought about the long journey that had brought humanity to this moment. They had started as a primitive species marked for destruction. They had become the most powerful military force in the galaxy, and now they had chosen to give up that power in favor of something better. The galaxy would never be the same, and for the first time in 1,000 years, that was exactly what everyone wanted. Outside the chamber, representatives from dozens of species were already meeting and planning joint projects. The Villani were offering to share their agricultural techniques with former oppressors. The Krolix were discussing how to convert their military technology for peaceful purposes. Even the Valorians were quietly exploring ways to contribute to the new galactic community. The age of conquest was over. The age of cooperation had begun.